If someone is unlucky enough to go into a coma, the result is pretty black and white. They either come out of it or they don't. Only, that's not true at all. And in fact, there's a whole bunch of gray area that not a lot of people talk about. And sometimes weird things happen in or even outside of the coma. And that's what we're looking into today. Here are 5 terrifying stories from being trapped in a coma. Number 5, the Ghost Boy. In the late 1980s, Martin Pistorius was a normal and active boy living in South Africa. However, at the age of 12, he began to experience a mysterious illness that doctors initially misdiagnosed as a flu. Over time, though, his condition worsened, and gradually he lost his ability to move, speak, and make eye contact. Despite numerous tests, medical professionals were stumped and could not identify the cause of his illness. Within a year, Martin would fall into a vegetative state. He lost all cognitive functions and then awareness of his surroundings. And so, there he lay, in bed, motionless. Martin's parents were told that he was unlikely to regain consciousness and should be taken to an assisted living home to live out his remaining days. For nearly a decade, this was his condition, and while the medical staff and his family were sure he was unaware of what was happening, that wasn't the case at all. Despite being paralyzed, Martin was conscious that entire decade. He could see and hear everything around him, but was utterly unable to communicate or move, and not even blink. It's a state known as locked-in syndrome, a terrifying condition where the mind remains active but the body paralyzed, leaving the individual incapable of any sort of interaction. Martin described this period as being like a ghost, hence the moniker Ghost Boy, as he would become known. He was an invisible observer of his own life, listening as people spoke about him, often assuming he was not there. The mental anguish and loneliness he experienced was profound. Martin later recounted moments when he would mentally scream for help, desperately trying to reach out to those around him, but there was simply nothing he could do. And then miraculously, after nearly a decade, he then began to regain some control over his body. It was gradual, but slowly he gained the ability to communicate using slight movements. The breakthrough came when a caregiver noticed his subtle responses and encouraged his parents to have him tested for cognitive functions. It was then discovered that Martin was indeed conscious and aware. With the help of technology, he learned to communicate using a computer and speech-generating device. His family and caregivers were astonished by the intelligence and humor he displayed. The rehabilitation was arduous, requiring immense effort and determination. However, his resilience paid off, and he slowly regained more control over his life. That nickname Ghost Boy encapsulates Martin's experience of being trapped in a body that couldn't respond to the world around him. He was present in every sense, but invisible to those around him. This nickname also reflects the eerie and haunting nature of his existence during those years. Martin's story highlights the often overlooked possibility that individuals in vegetative states might still be aware, urging a re-examination of how such patients are treated and perceived. He's since gone on to write a memoir titled Ghost Boy, My Escape from a Life Locked Inside My Own Body, where he shares all the details of how his mind played things out in the journey to reclaim his life. His story has inspired many, and today Martin is an advocate for people with disabilities, spreading awareness about locked-in syndrome and the importance of never giving up hope. Because while it is a rare condition that doesn't receive a lot of attention, locked-in syndrome can happen to anyone at any time. Number 4, Emperor Matthew Taylor. Encephalitis is a serious condition characterized by inflammation of the brain, often caused by infections or autoimmune responses. People most often get it from mosquitoes and ticks that carry it, and symptoms can range from mild headaches and flu-like symptoms to severe neurological effects, including confusion, seizures, and coma. They can be different for everyone, really. For Matthew Taylor, an engineer from the UK, he barely had time to see it coming as the onset of his encephalitis was sudden and devastating. He experienced severe headaches and fever, which quickly escalated to seizures and a loss of consciousness. Not long after that, he landed in a coma. During this time, Matthew's mind didn't just go blank, though. It took him on an incredible journey. He found himself in a dystopian future where he believed he was an emperor. And these hallucinations were not just fleeting images or jumbled up like a dream where nothing really connects. These were intricate and detailed experiences that span what felt like years. In this alternate reality, Matthew navigated political intrigue, battles, and the day-to-day responsibilities of his empire. He would wake up each day, have to try to conquer what was left of the world, and go to bed each night with the weight of it all hanging on his shoulders. The vividness of everything was so powerful that upon waking, he recounted it all with the clarity of real memories. The moment Matthew awoke, after 10 days in the coma, he was both relieved but also in a state of shock. The detailed world he had inhabited for what felt like years just vanished in an instant. He was no longer an emperor, but a patient lying in a hospital bed surrounded by beeping machines and concerned faces. The transition from his dream state to reality was disorienting, and the realization that none of his experiences had been real was profoundly unsettling. Adjusting to reality after such intense hallucinations was a complex psychological process. Matthew struggled to reconcile the vivid memories of his dream world with the real world. Support from his family, friends, and medical professionals was crucial, and they helped him navigate the confusion of it all. He truly couldn't understand how he lived another life fully, and yet was being told that none of it was real. Over time, Matthew developed coping mechanisms and began to distinguish his hallucinations from reality, though the memories remained vivid. And this is not the first story of people having similar experiences in comas like this. There's also been other instances where individuals have taken drugs such as DMT. They have left this dimension entirely, lived another life for decades, and come back only to find that a few minutes had passed here on Earth. And so, is that something similar to what Matt experienced, or are all these just a show of how powerful the mind is when it comes to coping mechanisms? Medical professionals who studied his case are mainly interested by the implications of how the brain constructs reality and processes experiences. No, they can't recreate it because they have no idea how he was able to do it. Number 3, Kata Lade. 39-year-old mother of 3, Kata Lade was someone who lived a healthy and active lifestyle. She was a runner, and so when she began to have a headache that lasted a few days, as she had always pushed herself through her physical workouts, well, she thought she would do the same here, just push through. But after about a week, the pain only seemed to intensify, so her husband took her to the hospital. She was examined and given some medication to help ease the pain and then sent home. And there she laid down for a few hours, and when she awoke, felt dizzy. She managed to get herself up and walk to the kitchen where she thought she asked her husband, "What's happening to me?" But instead, just a bunch of garbled nonsense came out of her mouth, and then she collapsed to the floor. Kate had suffered a massive stroke and left her in a coma. The medical prognosis was grim, with doctors predicting that she wouldn't survive. And despite the bleak outlook, Kate's journey was far from over. Her story of survival and recovery began in the most unlikely circumstances. After the stroke, Kate found herself in a locked-in state, just like in our first story, where she was fully conscious but unable to move or communicate verbally. mean, imagine being aware of everything around you but unable to express your thoughts or needs. And this was Kate's reality. She described this all as being trapped in her own body, like being stuck in a coffin with her mind active and alert, but her body just stuck. She was also in tremendous pain all throughout her body, but couldn't tell anyone. Immediately, she realized her situation, but refused to accept a condition, and so she began to fight back with every ounce of strength she had. The first signs of movement came about a week later when her husband and good friend were in the room, and they put something on TV that she didn't like. And they turned to find her blinking hard, as if she was trying to say she didn't want to watch that. From there, that turned into 1 blink for yes and 2 for no, and finally she could communicate. It would then be another 7 weeks before anything else moved, but after that she wiggled her thumb. Each step was a testament to her unwavering spirit, and eventually she could type, and then began to speak again. A little over 7 months after it all happened, Kate walked her way out of that hospital. On the anniversary of her stroke, she even ran a short distance, just to show herself she could. Kate's story has become a beacon of hope for many who face similar challenges. She's dedicated her life to raising awareness about strokes and the potential for recovery, offering support and motivation to others. There was no way she was going to be stuck like that, not with her children at home and her husband waiting for her. So she took control, and it's an amazing thing what she did. It shows the power of the mind is stronger than many of us think. Number 2, the mysterious world within. In England in 2012, Sarah Thompson, a 32-year-old wife and mother of 3's life, took a dramatic turn. Feeling slightly unwell one day, she experienced a headache and some sensitivity to light, and all that quickly escalated. Her husband then watched as his wife drifted in and out of consciousness while he waited for the ambulance to arrive. At the hospital, they revealed she had a 4-centimeter blood clot in her brain. The subsequent days saw her teetering on the brink of life and death, ultimately leading to a 3-week coma. And when Sarah finally woke up, she emerged as a totally different person. Her brain, having erased 14 years of memory, had her believing she was 19 years old once again. And this wasn't that she wanted to believe she was younger. Her mind just couldn't comprehend how if she didn't remember anything from the past 14 years, then how could they have happened? Upon waking, Sarah found herself in a world she no longer recognized. The sight of her aged family members and her own reflection as a 32-year-old woman was a disorienting shock. She had no recollection of her husband Chris or their 3 children, 14-year-old Michael, 5-year-old Daniel, and 4-year-old Amy. In fact, she looked at Chris and thought he was kind of a nerd and couldn't even believe people were telling her that she married this man. Now, her mind was frozen in the year 1998, a time when Tony Blair was Prime Minister and the atrocities of 9/11 were yet to occur. And this Sarah, who woke up, was also a stark contrast to the woman Chris remembered, a responsible, conservative, and prim homemaker. Returning home after 6 weeks in the hospital, Sarah faced the daunting task of reconstructing her life. And Chris, a 34-year-old IT business owner, was faced with the daunting task of reintroducing himself and their children to their mom. The kids, too, had to adjust to a mother who, despite being physically present, felt emotionally distant. And Sarah's journey of rediscovery involved piecing together the fragments of a life she no longer remembered. Her transformation from a conservative wife to a rebellious teenager had been both strange and challenging for her family. While she understood that Michael, Amy, and Daniel were her offspring, she just didn't feel it the way a mother should, and she saw them more like nieces and nephews, as she put it. And these emotional disconnects were a daily battle, and the disconnection extended into her role as a wife, where she felt like she was just pretending to play family, putting on a smile as if everything was okay. Slowly, though, with the help of photographs and patient explanations from Chris, Sarah began to rebuild her identity. She viewed her relationship with him as a new sort of romance, and gradually she fell back into the role of wife and mother. While the memories never returned, she had to adjust to the reality of her new life and just be thankful that she ever even managed to survive in the first place. Number 1. The Adventure of Alex Lewis. In 1982, a catastrophic motorcycle accident left Alex Lewis in a coma for 3 months. When he awoke, he found himself in a reality he couldn't recognize. The only person he remembered was his identical twin brother, Marcus. And stripped of all personal memories, Alex then relied entirely on him to reconstruct his past, making Marcus the sole keeper of their shared history. This profound act of trust then set the stage for a remarkable and complicated story that would unfold over the next several decades. Upon waking up in Guildford Hospital, 18-year-old Alex felt a profound sense of alienation. Everything was unfamiliar. He felt genetically connected only to his twin brother Marcus. He said he clung on to everything he said as the truth. He became Alex's memory. Marcus took on the burden of his brother's past, crafting a story that painted a happier, more benign picture of their childhood. And this fabricated narrative was not a mere omission of facts. It was a deliberate reconstruction aimed at shielding Alex from a devastating truth. And their father had died in a car crash when the twins were 6, leaving them to live with their mother, stepfather, and much younger half-siblings. The years following Alex's accident were marked by an emotional detachment from his family. Marcus provided Alex with a sanitized version of their history, filling in the gaps with stories of school, friends, girlfriends, and family holidays. Yet, despite these efforts, Alex remained emotionally distant, sensing an underlying issue. And the facade Marcus constructed began to crumble as Alex's subconscious grappled with all his unaddressed trauma. It wasn't until their mother died in 1996 that the full extent of their troubled past came to light. Marcus, who had disassociated from the trauma by creating dual realities, one where the abuse occurred and another where it did not, entered therapy. It was through therapy that the suppressed memories of abuse of all kinds by their mother surfaced. Alex, driven by an inexplicable sense of missing pieces, also sought therapy, and a therapist suggested that he talk to his siblings, suspecting there was more to their family's history. Eventually, their half-siblings, then 19 and 21, confirmed that they too had been abused. Confronted with this, Marcus finally admitted the truth. And finding out what had really happened to me was harder than the accident, Alex said. The discovery felt like a fresh trauma, forcing him to reconfigure his identity one more time again. Alex's discovery of the truth in his early 30s brought a torrent of emotions: anger, relief, sadness, and a sense of betrayal. Yet despite the enormity of the deception, he never harbored any resentment towards his brother. Their bond, forged in the crucible of shared trauma, remained unbroken. Alex reflected, saying, "You could argue he denied me my past, but I feel he saved me. I didn't have the capacity to deal with the memory of abuse straight after my accident." Their story was first told in their 2013 book, Tell Me Who I Am, which also became a documentary that Netflix put out in 2019. So if you're interested in the full story and all the details, you can check it out. Their tale opens a window into the human psyche, revealing how we construct our identities and cope with the shadows of our past. As Marcus acted out of love to help shield his brother, he also protected himself at the same time. So there were 5 terrifying stories from being trapped in a coma. Hope you all enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. so you know when we're putting out our new videos each and every week. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you soon.